Me. Welcome to Notorious Women Podcast, guys. I'm Lavetta.
I'm Miriam.
And this is Notorious Women Podcast, a comedy podcast about some of history's most notorious women.
That's right.
How you doing, darling?
I'm good. Hanging in.
Hanging in there?
Yeah.
I am excited to tell you about my lady today.
Oh, Lord. I'm so excited.
But first, I interrupted you. You were about to tell me about life. You're hanging in there.
I'm hanging in there, and I've learned I teach a lot of breathing, and so I've had lately it's been that does work. So yes. PSA, you're welcome. Take a breath in and a breath out. It will problem solve. It really will.
Yep. You know, they do say breathing, drinking water, and getting rest are the keys to life.
Meanwhile, I'm holding my breath. I'm drinking coffee and I'm staying up till 1. So I don't know what's wrong. I don't really know. There's no answer.
It seems so simple, but there's so much going on, and you're a mom, so I have no excuse. I don't even have a furry child. I don't have a kitty cat. I don't have a doggy.
You know what, though? Wherever you go, there you are. And I think that works for life, too. It's
Amen.
Not like I didn't have stress before children. I super did. Do you know what I mean? It's just different, you know?
Yeah. Adulting's hard. Adulting's hard. So
and it don't stop. It don't stop.
That's the thing. It don't stop.
Nope. But we have
when
each
you're
other.
a kid, yeah. when you're a kid, you're like, oh, school is so long, but you're like, oh, I have the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Where I get to sleep in. I get to relax. Mm-hmm. Adults don't have no summer.
No. And now for winter break, if you're in America, you get 3 weeks off of school. 3 weeks. Did you know that? It's 3 weeks.
No, I did not.
Honestly, it's 3 weeks and a day. Just to nail the coffin in. You know what I'm saying? Oh, are you sick of your kids? One more day. All
right, let's get started.
Let's get started.
I believe I am first this week. And
yes,
for those of you who are new to our podcast, the way it works, we're probably going to do this for a couple episodes. Just in the beginning to remind you. So every week, Miriam and I come to the podcast with a notorious woman. Some are good, some are bad, some are awesome. Yep. And we tell each other. Now, we don't know which lady.
Nope.
Either one of us has.
We come
tell
terrified.
each other
yes.
a story about a notorious woman. So this week, I'm first. And again, I like a murderess.
Lord.
I like a killer. I like a woman who stabs. So my notorious woman this week is one of my favorite murderesses is Hannah Mary TABBS.
Can I just say one thing real quick?
Yes.
I love that you have a list of favorite murderesses. That is amazing to me. Okay,
well,
that's all I have to say.
She's probably my favorite murderess, but my favorite serial killer in general is H.H. Holmes.
Okay, so do you have a list on your wall? Okay, duh. Why did I ask?
It's not because obviously I don't condone murder, even though some motherfuckers need to be killed. I mean, let's just keep it real.
It's untrue, right? I mean,
because on this podcast, we believe that the Holocaust happened.
It did.
And Nazis are bad. We still believe Nazis are bad.
We still believe Nazis are bad.
And I would have killed baby Hitler. I'm just going to say it.
Also, just while we're at it, in the modern day, Kutsi, slavery was wrong.
Yes.
The whole time.
I believe in killing slave owners. I'm just, as a black woman,
fair.
I have that right.
Yep.
You know.
I'm Jewish. Kill the Nazis. You know.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I mean, despite what's going on in the world, most sane people still believe that Nazi equals bad. Not Germans, but Nazis.
No. In fact, Germany is killing it.
Germany's killing it.
They're rocking it out. Let us learn. Okay.
Because Germany's like, we don't know nothing about those people. That ain't us no more.
Nope. We are once again.
So
whereas in
Nazis are
America,
bad.
we're like, was slavery all that bad? Yes,
Exactly.
It was.
Yes, it was bad. It's bad. So
right.
So my lady this week is Hannah Mary TABBS, and let me tell you a little bit about Hannah Mary TABBS, Miriam.
I'm so excited.
So Hannah Mary TABBS was born Hannah Ann Smith in the 1850s in Arundel County, Maryland.
Okay.
It was a notoriously brutal slave state.
Yes.
And obviously, if she was born in the 1850s, she was born in bondage. And she came of age, of womanhood, during the Civil War. So,
God,
Civil War breaks
1850.
out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, so Civil War breaks out in 1861 in the United States and lasts till 1864. I'm sorry, 1865, excuse me. Yeah. It lasted about 4 years. So now, about a decade after the end of the Civil War, so we're in the antebellum period, Reconstruction, she moved to Baltimore along with what people called her, quote, mulatto niece. Now, mulatto's a bad word, people.
Oh my God. Did I ever tell you my mulatto story? I hate saying that word. Okay.
It's a bad word, and we will tell you why. Go ahead.
So it's a bad word. And it's a bad word. I thought we all knew that. This was back in the day when like little white girl Miriam was like, we'll all get along now. Let's make fun of that one racist guy. But other than that, we're fine. So innocent me is sitting, I don't remember, like I was waiting for someone and this older woman, and I was sitting next to my husband, and my husband and I are super cute. I'll just say it. We're adorable.
They are.
And so we were like joking around, and she was like, you two are so cute. And it was right after Christmas. So she was like, what do you do for Christmas? And we're like, oh, well, we go to his house because I'm Jewish, so we don't have to worry about my side because Hanukkah ain't not that big of a deal. It's not. It's just not. It's fine. Thank you for saying Happy Hanukkah, but like you don't have to. Anyways.
I will always say it.
Thank you, Lavetta. But like Christmas is better. It's fine. I mean, come on. We get
You're going to lose your Jewish card. I'm just saying. That's great. Even I know that. Come on.
Listen, a lot of Jews agree with me. Okay. Christmas is like Mary. Hanukkah's like, remember the war? Here's some candy. All right. So if only I weren't telling the truth.
You were so wrong.
So point is, we just like, oh, random. That's what happened. She went, oh, so you're a mixed marriage. And we're like, well, yeah, you could put it that
religiously.
Way. Yeah. Religiously, yeah. She's like, I'm okay with that kind. It's the other kind I don't like. And I was like, okay. And this was, Lavetta, this really was innocent Miriam times. This was like, I would say 15 years ago. And Obama was president. So I thought we were good, right? I was wrong. Okay. So I said, what other kind? I knew the answer, but I was like, this woman needs me. So let me pull it out of her and let me try to help her. Because someone's got to, right? So I did. I said, what do you mean? Well, of course, when an African American, when they really hit the African American, that's when you know they're
with
racist,
disdain.
Right? Yeah. And I further prodded, and she's like, well, it's the children I'm worried about. And of course, I said, why? Because I'm trying to help here. Right. So I got to pull it out of her. And she goes, well, they're mulata, couldn't remember how to say the very racist term. So what do you do with that? Do you tell her how to say the racist term? What do you do? What do you do?
It's so funny because whenever someone says something that's like, problematic, we'd all like to believe that we would be like, no, this is how you say that and be gentle and da-da-da. But a lot of times it just catches you so off guard that sometimes you don't
shocking.
have a return.
And bitch slapping isn't really an option in your time and place, right?
Because she's an old lady.
Yeah,
and it's just like...
So it
Yeah.
turns out, so here's what I did. I said, well, the word is technically mulatto, but we don't say that anymore. And she
Right.
said, shocked. We don't? No,
No.
we don't. And she come to find out her precious white boy is with a black woman and they have a child, her
There it
grandchild.
is.
And I'm like, you're calling your grandchild this word? Listen,
There it is.
listen, I said, I did what I could do. I said, listen, there's only a problem for the child if the child is not accepted by their family.
Right.
And if their child is, and she did, I will give her this. She looked at me like, really? And I was like,
You know why? Because people dumb, girl.
Yeah.
People dumb. There are a lot of dumb people in this world. Just dumb.
I mean, what? So, like, I hope, like, my heart, like, if she's listening, we have changed her ways. She's not listening.
No, she's not.
But I mean, this, like, that's why I'm always very big on people, like, it's okay if you thought the wrong thing ever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Because, like, if you're willing to listen, and she kind of did. She was like, oh, I said, is your son, and I don't think they were married yet, but, and his woman happy together? Oh, yes, very happy. Great.
Well, yeah.
And what? So
They had
to
a beautiful
me,
baby.
it sounds like there's no problem. And they moved across the country because of you. That's what I'm getting. I didn't say those words to
Yeah.
her. So anyways, that's my very long story. I apologize, but I just
It's
needed to
okay.
share
I mean,
that.
just so people know, mulatto, we no longer say that word because it means mule. And it was given to the byproduct mostly of enslaved black women who were raped.
Yep.
None of this romantic stuff about
None of
falling
it.
in love.
Nope.
You can't fall in love with somebody who owns you.
Yep.
You so who were raped and
Don't know why
forced
we have to keep saying that, but okay, here we are.
yeah, mixed race children. And mule comes from, I think it's Portuguese or is it Spanish? Don't quote me on that. But it means mule because a mule is a byproduct of a donkey and a horse. So, and they can't reproduce themselves. That is why mulatto is a problematic fucking word. So and
when
that
we
is
say,
why
how dare you, that's why.
you cannot, yeah. So just so you know, but so back to Hannah Mary TABBS.
Let's go back to her.
So she moved to Baltimore along with her quote unquote mulatto niece, but a lot of people believe that it's her daughter actually, which is a byproduct of rape while she was enslaved. Now, while she was in Baltimore, in 1874, she met and married a man by the name of John TABBS. He was a Civil War vet and a man 15 years her senior, so he's significantly older than her.
Okay.
And now this is the Victorian age, so women found respectability in marriage oftentimes. If you weren't married, you weren't considered a respectable woman, you know, which is crazy, anyway. So now around 1875,
Problematic.
she and her husband, So in 1875, she and John and Annie all moved to Philadelphia, where she worked as a domestic for a lawyer and then for a wealthy farmer in Eddington County, a small town outside of the city, out of Philadelphia. Okay. Now, but she, John, and Annie lived in the 7th Ward in Philly. There's a black community in which she lived. And it was, again, this is post-Civil War, and even though it's in Philadelphia, Philadelphia is one of the most historically racist cities, at least to the black people. And it was a place where
I think you could take their word for it. So
yeah,
I think that's fair enough. Yeah,
it's fair enough. It's accurate. So now, by the end of even prior to the end of the Civil War, black people, even in the North, experienced a lot of racism and institutionalized racism in where they could live. So this caused a lot of the continuation of poverty even after the Civil War, because we were never given our damn reparations, but that's a whole nother story. And so a lot of times it forced black people all together in the poor side of town. Now, apparently in the 7th Ward, it was poor, but it was also working class. But they were all kind of pushed together in this area. Now, in the 7th Ward, Hannah was known to be a terrible, terrible person.
Really?
She was known to lie, cheat, and even beat men, women, and children.
Like,
including,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's just a violent woman, including her husband and her neighbors. Oh, yeah.
What?
She was terrorizing these black people. Because you have to keep it in context, because at this time, they didn't have black, citizens didn't have a recourse to call the cops. Because the cops were often brutalizing them as well, which some things never change.
Yeah. No, I have so many lines. I don't know what to say at that time.
And this is in 1875. So she was doing all of this stuff. And so they didn't really have a recourse. A lot of times these communities had to do social justice within their own communities. But by all accounts, she was just a terrible human being. A lot of times historically, black women sort of had to, in order to navigate and feel some kind of safety in society, if they didn't have the protection of a husband or male family members, they would put on a bravado and that's where the strong black woman trope sort of develops in order to protect themselves from violence.
Themselves and their families too.
Yeah. But this is not Mary, Hannah. Hannah's just a terrible person.
I think she might just be bad. I don't know. Yeah.
Now, as terrible as she was known in the 7th Ward, in Philly 7th Ward, to white people on the outside, she was known as a virtuous, subservient, and upstanding woman.
She knew how to play. That's what she knew how to do.
I just don't know nothing about nothing. Now working as and also this is probably something that she learned while being in bondage too, like to survive.
Yes.
When white folks come around, you become subservient because that's what's expected. And it's so interesting because prior to the end of the Civil War, black women and black men were considered, so kind and it's also patronizing, like docile, but trustworthy because they were slaves.
Because they were slaves.
But afterwards,
afterwards,
it's because they're lazy, they can't be trusted, all this stuff, right? So that's a side note. But now, so Hannah worked on the white part of town as a domestic, which that was mostly the only thing open to black women at the time, especially a former enslaved woman. And now, while working as a domestic, she met this man by the name of Silas Wakefield Gaines.
Okay.
Silas, I'll probably refer to him as Gaines for the rest of this, but Gaines was about 10 years her junior. So her husband's 15 years her senior.
Okay.
And Gaines is 10 years her junior.
All right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Hannah was getting it in. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. She likes them young. She likes them old. She likes a variety.
Listen, I get it where you can. And apparently, this is the 1880s. So apparently not only was she was starting an affair, it wasn't like an affair in the normal sense, because apparently her husband knew about it.
Oh, what? Huh?
Yeah. Gaines is just coming over to the house, staying.
Oh, she's upstairs, ready to have sex with you. Oh, yeah. Thanks. Have a lovely day.
And John is okay. I have a feeling that John didn't really have a say. I have a feeling that Hannah probably was like, this is gonna be the way it is. And what you gonna do? And he's like, nothing, darling.
Nothing. I'm gonna do nothing.
Yes. So Gaines even had clothes at her house. So he's basically living. When I say throuple, I'm not really kidding.
Oh my God. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So some people say that she had an agreement with John and that's what happened. So, but apparently Gaines was also married. So I don't know if he and his wife were still together or she had disappeared or a lot of times people just disappeared back then. I know this even from my own childhood. Sometimes black people just stay married even though they're not together because it's too expensive to get a divorce.
Oh, I know so many people who do that.
Yeah.
So technically technically you have a husband? What? I've known you for 10 years. Oh, we got married 20 years ago. Don't worry about it.
And Gaines apparently was about 21 when this happened. So what's about to happen happened. So he was fairly young. So who knows? He may have gotten married at like 15 or 16. Who knows? Now in 1886, Annie, her niece / daughter, went missing, and no one knew where she went. Later on, it's believed that she just ran away because Hannah was so terrible to her. Just used to beat her, like just terrible.
Yeah. I could see her running away. That feels right to me.
Yeah. Now, about a year after she disappears, on February 16th, 1887, a local carpenter on his way to work discovered a headless, limbless, and torso wrapped in paper and labeled "Handle with care."
Oh my God!
In a pond. Yeah, in a pond in Bucks County.
I'm sorry.
Nearby.
What?
Yeah.
What did you just say?
Headless, limbless torso wrapped in paper.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I need a minute. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously it was. People were terrified because if you find something like that, you're like, what? So now Gaines was a lighter skinned man. And so at first people thought it was the limbless, headless torso of a white man. So people freaked out. They're like, people killing white men, cutting off their heads. Yeah. And also it's just a terrible, gruesome thing. So because of
really,
this,
really is. Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't that take like a
this,
skill? Sorry, go on.
I think people back then also was just a little bit more brutal. Like they just had harder lives, and like, you know, these are people who probably had to kill livestock to eat, wring chickens' necks. Like these are like country
that's
folk.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, even unless you were like gentried and, you know, and you had servants, you were doing a lot of this stuff on your own. So I think people's stomach was a little bit more, they could take a little bit more than we could in, you know, today.
Yeah.
So
I would not be good.
Yeah. So, but because they thought this was a white man, they were like, oh, all bulletins out. People were freaking out. And also it's just a terrible, gruesome thing. Yeah, it's just a terrible, terrible thing. So because of this, police started an investigation and they started asking around the area, and they came across this train conductor who said that he remembered a tall, dark-skinned colored woman carrying 2 packages.
Okay.
Now, at first, they didn't suspect this tall, dark-skinned colored woman. They just wanted to talk to her to see if she found anything, right? if she saw anything. So authorities figured out that colored woman was a tall woman by the name of Mary TABBS. Mm-hmm. So authorities brought her in for questioning. And also around this time, Gaines' sister, Jane, had reported him missing. But again, they're thinking the torso. Authorities, because also, let me put this in context. Authorities were not talking to Black people. They were not going into Black neighborhoods and questioning them about anything. They only started talking to, they were talking mostly to the white people at first. And then once they kind of figured out that this torso may be Gaines, who was a lighter skinned man, they had already started the investigation. So that's when they started talking to Black neighbors. But at first they were only talking to white people.
Well, because they're more comfortable that way.
Yeah. So they brought in Hannah. And by all accounts that both she and later her accomplice were beaten. They were brutalized in custody.
Oh, shit.
Right. Yeah. And so, but at first they brought her in, and then and even when they brought her in, she had a black eye, which they think was from the altercation with Gaines. Yeah. But then after being in police custody, her black eye didn't get any better, and it seemed to be a little bit worse. So some people speculated that the police, they probably did, roughed her up.
I mean, here I am not surprised. Okay.
Yeah.
Probably that happened. Yeah.
So they bring her in for questioning, and she fingers this young man by the name of George Wilson, who was a young mixed race man that knew her niece, that knew Annie. She started singing like a bird. Once she realized the jig was up and the white folks got involved, she was just like, it was him. He made me do it. So, yeah. Okay. So they arrested him, and then they both went to jail to await trial.
Okay.
Now the trial lasted for months because, again, it was already in the papers because they found this headless, limbless torso of a white man, they thought at first. Because obviously it was discolored, but he was also a lighter skinned man. And so it was already a sensation. And then once they started uncovering, the guy was black, and then this colored woman had done it with another man, it was just a sensation. People were freaking out, black and white. They were freaking the fuck out, right?
I'm freaking the fuck out right now. Okay, go on.
Yeah. So it was a sensation. They dubbed her the murderess. And the torso case was on the front news of everything. So keep in mind, black people just being ignored. Nobody knew what was going on in the 7th Ward. And then all of a sudden plastered on the front page. Okay. Now, in her initial statement to police, she said that her niece Annie was having an affair with both Gaines and Wilson, but had run away. So one night, Wilson, the young man, George, knocked on her door while Gaines was at home. And he said to her that he knew where Annie was, but that she needed money. So Hannah's like, I gave him some money. This is to make herself look sympathetic. I gave him some money and clothes and a hat to give to Annie and bring back to her. But she said she never heard from Wilson. And then she ran into him in a cigar store a few days later and accosted him because she wanted to know where Annie was. And Wilson told Hannah, this is all according to Hannah, that Annie was not well and could not come back. So she demanded her money back from him because she thought he was stealing from her. Again, she's painting herself in like as the victim.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, so she made up this whole kind of thing. That's initially what she said to the authorities. But again, when authorities were questioning Gaines's sister, the murdered guy, Jane Cannon, she again told them that Mary, Hannah Mary TABBS, and Wakefield Gaines, her brother, had been having a salacious affair that was often violent.
Oh.
She even said that in one of those altercations, Hannah sliced Gaines's face.
What?
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, God.
But I still think that cops were just like, honestly, I think it was racism. They were just like, Negroes, what do you expect? Right? This is what I think.
Racism?
I hate to say it. I know. I hate to say it, but I just feel like there was a lot of like, because I feel like it's kind of like talking to a brick wall. Like, obviously Jane had been looking for her brother and couldn't find him. And again, no one at first thought that this torso was a black man, and then all this other stuff. So all of this stuff is coming out in the investigation. Have
they confirmed that the body is Gaines?
They pretty much suspect, once they start putting the clues together, his disappearance, they think it's Gaines, even though they never found his head.
Okay. I guess
but
that's
apparently,
what my question was. But, oh, God. Okay.
Apparently, he had a very unique, his shoulders were very uniquely shaped.
Okay.
So that's how they identified him as the torso.
So maybe she didn't realize how unique his shoulders were.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what, Hannah's, I would imagine Hannah, she sounds like she was a terrible person, but she also sounds like, I don't know how extensive her sexual history was. Maybe, Gaines was the only other guy she had ever been with, or the third guy, because obviously if Annie's her, she probably, and a lot of black women were violated in bondage. So who knows? But this is a man who's younger than her, who's hers. I think she's definitely that kind of woman who's like, this is mine, mine. Like the pelicans from, Finding Nemo. Mine.
Oh my God, you remember those.
Mine.
Yeah.
And so that is how they pretty much assumed that Gaines was the disembodied torso. Okay. Now, so Hannah and George are in custody, and they had two separate trials. George's trial was first, and in that one, Hannah was a witness for the prosecution against George.
Okay.
And again, she blamed everything on him. And she did that thing that I love it. I love to call it like Gone with the Wind fantasy that white people have. Like, white people are like, I never go hungry again with this pleasant Southern accent. And all the black people are like, well, I just don't know. I don't know nothing about birthing the babies. Right? So she played into that. And she was just like, I don't know. I don't know, sir. I just don't. She didn't look at the white people in the eyes. Oh, she was just like playing it up.
I know my place.
I'm scared. I just don't know nothing. This man made me do it. This bitch. This bitch.
I want you to play her in the movie of this movie.
I just don't know. I just don't know, sir. I'm Southern, so I can play that.
Oh my God,
most Southern accents in TV and film are terrible. We do not sound like we're from the Civil War. We don't, despite what you guys might think. I just don't know, sir. I just don't know.
Oh my God.
I don't know nothing about birthing no babies. So again, she played it up and she testified. Now she testified on the stand that she and Gaines had been having an affair. So, and also in public, she was apologetic and she tried to be like, I'm so sorry about having this affair. I don't no, this is how they would, this is what the white people would hear. I just don't know, sir. I'm sorry about having this affair. Lord, forgive me. But anyway,
it's not what she said, but that's what they heard.
That's what they heard. That's what they heard. She said in just regular American English, this is probably what she said. But she testified that, yes, she and Gaines had been having an affair. And that on the morning of the 16th in 1887, at her home, she lived on at 1642 Richard Street in Philadelphia in the 7th Ward. So she said that she was at home. And Gaines was there and George showed up. George Wilson showed up and he and Gaines got into it about Annie.
Okay.
Now, some speculate that Gaines, her lover, who again was around 21, was a little sweet on Annie.
Okay.
And he was a little jealous of Wilson. Now, George Wilson is about 19. So he and Gaines are similar in age. And Hannah's 10 years older than them. So, but she testified that that Gaines and Wilson got into a fight and which ended up, so she testified that Gaines attacked Wilson first, George Wilson first. And then, but it ended up with George Wilson hitting Gaines on the head with a chair and then continuing to hit him and being like, well, he came at me first. So I got mine. This is what she said. She characterized him as being aggressive and scary. Again, playing to that stereotype that black men are violent.
Yep.
And da-da-da. And even
she
though
just knows nothing about birth and no babies.
I don't. Exactly. And now, even though George, again, is a lot younger than her, he's also very light skinned. His mother's black and his father's white. But he was born in the North. So he was born free. And he didn't have that sense of like survival that black people who grew up probably on plantations had. Like, you have to play the game to get along because these white folks are crazy.
Yeah.
So, and also he's also a kid. He's like 19. He's
I just
a kid.
think about like now I'm old. So I look back like at 19, I was like, I'm a grown up, but I wasn't. No. I was wrong. And he is a child. Okay.
Yeah, and it sounds like he was just sweet on Annie.
Yeah.
And some people say he may have had a disability, mental disability. He just may have not been that quick on the uptake, and she took advantage of it.
Yeah.
But he sounds like a pretty like sweet, just kind of normal kid who had a crush on Annie.
Okay.
And he was dealing with this terrible, terrible human being.
Yeah.
So she goes on to say that after he hit him over the head with the chair, he then went down he dragged the body down to the cellar and then undressed him, chopped him up with the butcher's cleaver, and then came back after 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
Really? What you talking about, Hannah?
Okay,
really?
I
did all this in 20 minutes. Really?
So I watch a lot of Top Chef.
Okay.
And there's a lot of butchering. Okay. Yeah. And so when they butcher, even, I don't know, like a large chicken. Okay.
Yeah.
It actually takes like professionals, like 25 minutes to get it like done, you know? So I feel like maybe not. That's all.
I mean, he had worked in as a butcher. So she was playing into that. She's very smart, actually. Hannah's very smart.
I will say this for her. It seems to me from the get-go that she is very, very smart.
Yeah.
A lot of anger, but also a lot of intelligence.
Yeah.
Why would she be angry? No idea.
There. And also, she's angry. She has a right as a former enslaved black woman. I'm sure she went through a lot of shit. But also, Hannah Mary TABBS was a terrible person. So she's beating her husband, her neighbors, children.
I can't even visualize like what the neighbor's coming home from a long, and then she just like punches the face. Okay,
she's probably, she sounds like a big old bully. Just a bully.
Yeah, she's a bully.
Yeah, and now so she says that he did all this in 20 minutes, and then he comes back up and he goes into the kitchen. She's like, "What happened?" He was like, "Well, I took care of that." Like just playing into all of that. And then she says he tells her to dispose, that he would dispose of the head, arms, and legs, and then he gave her the torso and told her to dispose of it.
Okay.
So she took it to Bucks County, where it was found by the gentleman walking along that morning later. So ultimately, his trial ended up, he was convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 12 years of solitary confinement.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
He served about 9.5 years and was released in 1896. It's later believed that he got married.
Really?
Which good for him, and then had a series of unskilled labor jobs. So just like regular jobs. And
9.5 years of solitary confinement.
Yeah. That's kind of like how the prisons were back then. Like most people just stayed in their cells and, did labor for the prison, but they just kind of stayed in their cells.
My God. And then got out and got married. And
yeah, later on.
I mean, honestly, I'm a little impressed.
And also I'm impressed that he survived, because a lot of black people would not survive prison.
No.
And also he goes in when he's about 19 or 20. And this is traumatic. And by all accounts, again, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the shed. And it's not known if it's, again, a diagnosable kind of thing, or he's just a little slow. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I got him in my family. Ain't nothing, there's nothing you can diagnose him with. They're just not too bright, like most Americans.
I will tell you, I heard what you said, and I did not disagree. There's a diagnosis for everything nowadays, just to be clear. Yeah. I like to diagnose, like, quietly, and I don't tell anybody, but I'll be like, I know what that person has. Oh.
Here, like you've heard it here first, people.
I've diagnosed Miriam. All of you.
Yeah. And I also think he was just
half of them,
sweet,
just to be clear.
I know, right? He's just a sweet guy. Just a sweet, normal, innocent, I would call him.
Do you think he did any of it?
I think that I'll get to that in a little bit. Okay. So now Professor Callie Nicole Gross, who's the author of Hannah Mary TABBS and the Disembodied Torso. She's the preeminent expert on this case and Hannah Mary TABBS. She believes essentially that Hannah played the jury. Like I said, she was just like, "Oh, Lordy, I don't know." So she acted subservient, chaste, and a little dumb. Basically playing into white expectations of a black woman.
Yeah.
George, on the other hand, perhaps because he was mixed race, and like I said, he didn't play the game of the subservient role, and he came across to the jury as uppity and a tough guy who flaunted his whiteness because he was very pale. He was mixed race, and this was at a time where white people were still trying to figure out who's white. Like, we know that people came on the Mayflower are white and rich people are white, but are Irish people white?
No, it's
are
very
Jewish
true.
People white?
If you look at like the history of like white in America, it's really, really interesting because now I am white. I'm white. Right. But I wasn't always. No. I was Jewish and I couldn't get a job. And maybe I would try to what the difference between Irish and Italian and Jews is that we could fake it. And if you are black, Asian or, black or brown, basically, you can't. That's the color you skin. But America.
But black people who are mixed with white, who because of rape of black women, if he comes out, at least at that time, it's like, is it just skin color? Because again, racism is not real, people. It's not real.
It's not.
There's only one race, human race. It's not real.
It's literally not. Like, Lavetta, I don't think people know that.
No, they don't.
I really don't. And I think it is important. Like, it's totally made up. Like,
it's totally, and this is why at this time, again, like what we're saying, is that they're trying to figure out what is white. So they see this man who's saying that he's black, but he looks white, but he's not acting in the way they think black people should behave. Right.
And they're thrown.
Yeah. And they're angry at him for it. Because again, by all accounts, he's not the brightest bulb in the shed. But because he's not doing what she's doing, this is why they can be like, oh, he's uppity and he's quote unquote flaunted his whiteness.
I just love the word uppity, don't you?
Yeah. Uppity.
Doesn't that really?
It's racialized. It's not racist. It's racialized language. Anyway. So because of this, they just did a character assassination on George.
Yeah.
And they brought up his time in juvenile detention, juvenile home. He worked at a local slaughterhouse. He also changed his initial statement. So when they talked to him initially, he said he admitted to having a fight with Gaines, over, Annie's whereabouts, but he denied it because initially he just denied everything. And then later on, he changed on the stand, changed his testimony.
But it sounds to me that's because he was scared and not the brightest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he said that Hannah cut up the body and gave him packages containing the head, arms, and legs that he threw out in a nearby river. And that he hadn't seen Hannah until they were brought to the police station.
I believe him.
Okay. Yeah. Now, also another reason why the jury would believe, because this jury was all white men, of course, would believe Hannah over George is this is before the Lizzie Borden trial, which happened in 1892. So this is 1887.
You know the date of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love you, Lizzie Borden. I mean, who doesn't, right? So that happened in 1892. This is 1887. So even in the Lizzie Borden thing, people did not believe a woman, even a black woman, could chop up a body.
Yeah.
Like that definitely sounds like something a man would do.
No, she got away with it because she was just a little woman.
Yeah.
Who could do no
I'm
wrong.
a little black woman in a big silver box. That's from Jumpin' Jack Flash.
I remember that scene.
I love that scene. Now, when Hannah's trial came, it was next. So she pleaded to a lesser charge of accessory after the fact.
Okay.
Which was a maximum of 2 years. But she was sentenced to that, but she had been given time served. So she ended up serving a year and a half.
Wow.
After a year and a half for killing.
Girl, you literally got away with
body.
Murder.
She got away with murder. Dang. But she got away with murder. What I find interesting, she got away with murder by playing into racial stereotypes.
Listen, thanks to racism, she got away with murder.
She got away with murder.
Usually it doesn't work that way.
It usually doesn't work that way.
It's the other thing, the opposite of what I just said. Is usually what happens.
But poor George, this man got 12 years. Like, this is a terrible, terrible human being. Now, after she was released, she moved back to Maryland, where she as soon as she was released, her husband died. So you're like, did she kill him?
Yes, I'm just gonna go with yes.
No, Callie Nicole Gross, the author, said at first she thought the same thing, but then when she looked into it, no, it just kind of coincided. And he was a lot older than her, and he had survived slavery and being a Civil War vet. But I think he just secretly died. He's like, I can't handle this woman. I'm going to kill myself now. I'm going to give up the Holy Ghost now. because this bitch is going to kill me sooner or later. So let me go now. Okay?
I think he told his heart, he said, listen, heart, now is the time to stop beating. That's right, heart. No more.
Because she is definitely the type of woman that will blame everything on him.
Yep.
And take it out on him. Because he probably had been wounded. He just like, who knows what this poor man, he's like, I just want to eat my soup. That's all I want. I want to eat my soup, go to work, and have peace and quiet in my house. I survived slavery. Come on, people.
You know what? I will say this. It sounds to me like the last year and a half of his life was peaceful. And that's, you know, good for him.
And then he's like, this woman is coming out. So now Hannah Mary TABBS later also married again.
Oh my God, of course she did.
Somebody check on that man.
No, I know.
Check and see if he got life insurance.
Right.
I don't check on him. Mm-mm. And she later became a servant as well, serving what she did before. She was a servant for a family. Now, though it's not quite, we still don't quite know what happened that night in 1887 at Mary's house, but Callie Nicole Gross believes that Hannah and Gaines got into a bad argument, one of their many violent arguments. And because in her previous arguments with him, she had threatened to kill him. So she made good on the promise, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least she's honest.
Yeah, at least she's honest. And then George showed up asking, because again, he's sweet on Annie. So he's probably trying to help Annie out. And she convinced him either through intimidation or just tricking him. Because again, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the shed. And she convinced him to help her dismember the body and then to get rid of some of the body parts. Now, again, Callie Nicole Gross, she writes about Hannah Mary TABBS, quote, TABBS was a kind of black woman that I hadn't encountered before while studying history. She knew how to put up a front when it came to respectability, but she also knew how to manipulate, threaten, and brutalize people to get what she wanted, whether it was to be feared or to engage in a risque affair, end quote. It's just, and last note that Callie had a hard time finding early documentation on Hannah, which is often the case with enslaved people. But because Hannah, she filed for John's pension, Civil War widow's pension.
Okay.
Callie was able to find more information because, the people will give you that information. They're like, oh, can I get his pension? The widow's pension from that. So some black people were able to get that through the Freedmen's Bureau as well. It took a long, long time, but some of them were eventually able to get a widow's pension like the white wives were of Civil War vets as well.
That is good. Yeah. She is terrible, but that is good.
I'm going to wrap up here. But one last note is that, what was so interesting, in addition to this case, in addition to the, salaciousness of it, the disembodied torso, was that, this was also one of the few and one of the first times and few times that Black sexuality, and particularly Black female sexuality, was brought to the national forefront. Because they thought of Black women as either, or Black people in general as either overly sexual to make excuses for sexually exploiting them, or asexual. So there's that image of Black women in American culture and books and society as either being the mammy or the Jezebel. The Jezebel being the overly sexual woman, or the mammy being the asexual, lovable, kind-hearted woman. And, one is deemed at least respectable and the other one is not, even though neither one is really protected in U.S. history. And so, but that's why Callie was so interested in this case, because Hannah, bitch that she was like, I'm getting mine. I'm getting mine. I'm going to have me a boy toy on the side.
I also want to say rock out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that she is someone who very much embodies almost like our point of this podcast as a whole is that you cannot pin any woman in a box.
Yeah.
Right. And she exemplifies that in a time and place where, man, they loved a box. You know,
they love the box. And I also agree with Gross, because we've had, I understand where respectability politics come from for Black people. I get it. Because we're trying to counter a narrative about us as being less than and all this other stuff. But I agree with Gross in that, every Black person doesn't have to be W.E.B. Du Bois or, Harriet Tubman or Ida B. Wells to warrant historical research,
and it to be in our culture and our narrative of a country, right?
Yeah.
We have, for lack of a better term, like great murderers. I don't know how else to put it in our knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Dahmer, everybody knows him, right?
Yeah.
We can throw in the reality of our history, which is not just that one very bad white guy.
Yeah. And women,
women.
True equality is that you get equal treatment. And Hannah Mary TABBS was a terrible human being.
Yeah.
But she's my notorious woman, and I stand because she's a terrible human being. And
I love it.
I hope people found out about her. But also like the secrecy of it. She was terrorizing her Black neighbors. And
they could do nothing
bitch.
about it.
They could do nothing about it. Yep.
Man.
So that's Hannah Mary TABBS, my notorious woman.
When I say she is amazing, please know that I'm not like looking to befriend her.
No. I just don't know nothing by nothing. Okay,
girl. All right.
I don't know nothing by murder.
What's that word? I've never heard of it. I'm just dumb with breasts.
Who's your notorious woman this week?
Okay, so my notorious woman is very long, but I'm going to kind of get to the point. It's very different. I'm going back to France.
Okay.
I am.
All right.
Marie Antoinette.
Oh.
Because I was curious about the let them eat cake. That is, I bake Lavetta. Like, since the pandemic, yeah, it's delicious.
Cake is good.
It's so delicious. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of a baker now.
Okay.
Honestly, I bake cookies and I'm like trying to look into cake. And that's how it came into my head. So that's how we got to this place in which I'm going to tell you about Marie Antoinette. Okay. It's a little complicated.
She's,
it's long, but I'm going to cut. Okay. I'm going to get to the juicy stuff because there's juicy stuff. All right.
Okay.
So Marie Antoinette, she was born Maria Antonia on November 2nd, 1755 at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna, Austria. And she was the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa, who was the ruler of the Habsburg Empire, and her husband, Francis I, the Holy Roman Empire. So talk about privilege. Yeah.
She's privileged of the privileged.
She is so white, she's blinding. Okay. You can't even see her. Okay. So she has a sister, Maria Carolina, who's 3 years older, and they were close. She was close with her mom, but it was a little bit of a difficult relationship. Her mom called her Little Madame Antoine. She grew up at the Hofburg Palace and the Schönbrunn, which is the summer residence where she met Mozart as children. And they're very close in age. And her schooling was not, she didn't do very well in her schooling. Now, the way that this is written, I'm guessing that she had some kind of learning disability because she couldn't, her reading and writing was kind of terrible. They were kind of shocked about, but she was very good in music. She played 3 different instruments. She would sing for her family at night. She had, all reported that she had a beautiful voice. And then in 1768, Mathieu Jacques de Vermont, because we're in France again.
Show off.
You know.
I'm like, we?
That's good. That's close.
Harry? That's all I know.
Okay. Well, it's fine. It's fine. You're very beautiful. Okay, let's move on.
You're sweet.
I give. Okay, so he was dispatched by Louis the 15th. So I see an X and a V, and I carefully figure out that two of them next to each other is 15.
Okay. Yes. X is 10.
Thank you.
V is 5.
Thank you.
I do know that much.
Thank you for confirming, because I kind of asked. That was kind of a question. Okay. I did go to college. Okay. To tutor her because she was going to be the future wife of his son, Louis the 16th. And so he was like, oh, this girl's not smart. We need to up her tutoring. The tutor, the quote, ready? He says this about her. Her character, her heart are excellent. He found her, quote, more intelligent than has been generally supposed, but since, quote, she is rather lazy and extremely frivolous, she is hard to teach, which I feel like,
that's a diss.
That's like a little harsh. Lazy.
I mean, aren't they aristocrats? Aren't you supposed to be lazy?
That's exactly it. I think she saw, she read the room and said, okay, I'm going to sit here and fan myself like I'm supposed to do.
Other people fan her because that is what. Yes, obviously.
She knew the job. Okay, she's
Ouch.
like busy. Okay, so following the 7 Years' War and the diplomatic revolution of 1756. Empress Maria Theresa decided to end hostilities with her longtime enemy, King Louis XV of France. To seal their alliance, on February 7th, 1770, Louis XV formally requested the hand of Maria Antonia for his eldest surviving grandson and heir, Louis XV, or Louis XVI.
Okay, so she's from Austria. They spoke German then?
Austrian German. Oh God, I don't
Austrian
know.
German.
It's German.
I think it's German.
It's German.
Yeah,
but maybe there's like an accent.
Yeah,
but
it's German.
Quebecois versus.
Yeah,
I might be making everything I just set up.
We're not historians.
Not historians. Obviously, it's probably obvious at this point. So, by the way, everything is from Wikipedia. Wikipedia loves Marie Antoinette. Okay. So she renounced her rights to the Habsburg domain, and she was married by proxy in Vienna, and then met her husband, so in April, and then on May 14th, she met her husband, it says, at the edge of the forest of Compiègne. I don't know why they met at the edge of the forest, but here we are. So then when she arrived in France, she adopted the French version of her name and how we all know her, Marie Antoinette.
Oh, gotcha.
That's why. So she was Maria Antonia. Can you imagine,
I can't.
changing your name?
European royalty rules are so weird.
They crazy.
And I'm an Anglophile, and I think it's weird.
No, I love the BBC all day.
Yeah.
But you guys, calm down. So then they had a ceremonial wedding with the two of them there. And then they had the ritual. This is interesting. The ritual bedding. Do you know what the ritual bedding?
No, I'm afraid to ask.
Okay, you should be. So it's when they follow you to your bedroom to observe this is how I wrote it, the first royal fucking. Because that's what it is. They watch you have the sex.
Are they in the room? Or are they peeking through the hole? What are they doing?
The room, Lavetta. They're in the room.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I know. Oh God.
I thought they just had sex and then they checked the bedding.
That's what I thought too. But when you're reading Wikipedia and there's a highlight. Well, there was a highlight for ritual bedding, and I was like, I gotta know. And I clicked on it. And that's what happened. Can you imagine? Get out of my room. And they just met, right? So
and how old was Louis the 16th? How old was he?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Because can you imagine a poor guy? I guess if you're used to it from childhood, I guess you get used to doing weird stuff like that in front of servants and people.
I mean, I guess. Yeah, maybe. No big deal. Because they're not really people. They're just furniture.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Furniture to assist you whenever you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people aren't really people, it's easier, is my guess.
It reminds me of that scene from Bridgerton. I love Bridgerton.
I love Bridgerton.
Where the queen stands and people were there's 5, 7 people in the room while she's bathing. So I guess it's something similar, right? Just like,
Yes, I'm remembering that. It's like, to you and I, that's horrifying. But to her, it's
but
like,
can you imagine
cleanse
like,
me.
can you imagine like Louis and Maria, like him being like,
Well, thank
my
you.
lord, you may want to increase the rhythm.
Please to enter. I mean, what?
Ew, so gross. Ew. I'm getting creeped out.
It's funny that you say that because they famously had a long time challenge consummating the marriage. So I have a theory.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I have a really solid theory. But I'm going to let y'all guess what that theory is. Okay. So the initial reaction to the marriage itself was mixed because they loved Louis XVI. They thought he was wonderful. The people loved him. They weren't so comfortable being friends with Austria. And they were like, no, we love to hate you. And now you're here and it's awkward. So
I'm sorry, Miriam. Are you saying that there was white on white violence in Europe? Are you saying? Come on. No.
You know, this white on white violence is the real problem.
Hello, we were like black on black violence. I'm like, you do realize that England fought 100-year war with France? 100 years. During the Black Plague. They're like, nope, we're not stopping war.
I don't care. Go to there and murder the other white people now.
For 100 years. 100. It was over 100 years, actually, but they called it a 100-year war.
Yeah,
but I'm sorry. Go ahead. All right.
Thank you for that fun fact. I didn't know that. I mean, I might have passed it on a test once, but I didn't retain it.
100 years, girl.
Listen, all of European history, all of
This
it.
is war.
Murdering white people. I mean,
I have a theory that all that war and blood soaked into the ground is what ruined the crops, and that's why they had to go to Africa.
that makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Fuckers.
Killed the ground.
All right.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Go
Blood's
ahead.
got to go somewhere, right? All right.
Yeah.
So let's learn about a new woman, Madame du Barry. I don't know. It's Dewberry. It's Barry.
It's
spelled
Dewberry. You just showing off. It's Dewberry. Okay.
Okay.
It's America.
Dewberry.
It's America,
Okay.
bitches.
All right.
Dewberry. Dewberry.
Dewberry.
Like the baby Dewberry. It's not all fancy and French sounding. Dewberry.
Just like you. Okay.
You notice how like I southernize it because I can't pronounce it the French way. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know
That's
what's
the American
weird?
way.
Do you know what's weird? Is that I
weird.
do that too. It makes no sense. I've barely been to the American South. At one point in my voice and speech class, because back in the day, I took a voice and speech class, and my teacher went, "Oh, are you Southern?" And I went, "I'm from California. There is no reason I should be talking like this. I don't know."
You know
and
why?
she looked at me like, "Why?" And I was like, "I can't help you. I don't know."
You've been watching Gone with the Wind. I don't know nothing but nothing.
If only I had that excuse, but I have only seen the movie but once.
I know.
It was very long and kind of
People
racist.
think that's, but you think it's all American. They think Southern, like bad Southern accent is real America. You're like, no.
Yeah, I know.
no.
You're like, there's nothing relatable, but
No.
okay, it's a story.
It's a story.
Thank you for the story. All right. So she proved to be a troublesome foe to the new Dauphin, Louis the 16th. So she was his father's mistress, and Dewberry.
Okay.
Had a lot of political influence over him, and she was instrumental in ousting Etienne Francois Duc de Chaux. No, I can't even say that word. But anyway, this dude who had helped orchestrate the Franco-Austrian alliance and her marriage, and in exiling one of Marie Antoinette's ladies in waiting. So she did not like her. She was like, I don't like Austria. I don't like Marie.
Oh, she was
And
anti-Austrian.
She was anti-Austrian. And so she was told that by her husband's aunts told her to refuse to acknowledge her. And so she did that, but then that was considered a blunder. So she had to fix that. And the way she fixed it was she went to a party. Her mother said, girl, fix it. And she was like, okay, fine. She went to a party, went up to Dewberry and said, there are a lot of people at Versailles today, which was enough to calm it down. The second her father-in-law dies, so he died in 1774. They exiled her. So Dewberry was exiled.
Okay,
like,
so
bitch, I don't actually like you.
Okay, let me see if I understand it. So Dewberry was causing problems for the young Marie Antoinette, and
well, for
she's just
Austria,
for Austria, and then but Marie's mother was like, "Okay, you got to figure out how to make this work, how to make the peace."
Because the aunts said, go tell her off. So she was like, okay. So she dissed her.
Oh,
and then,
she told her off. And then
the people were like, how dare you? So her mother was like, wait. Pull back. Go be nice. So she said that line, whew, what a lot of people here at Versailles today. And that calmed things down. But then 2 years later, her father-in-law dies. And they're like, I'm just kidding. We don't like you. Goodbye.
Yeah, Marie's like, bitch, I might have said I'm okay, but we ain't cool. We ain't cool.
We are not friends.
Nope.
Okay, we are not friends. So then his father is dead. He ascends the throne, and then Marie Antoinette is now the royal consort. Which, as far as I can tell, based on what's happening in England now, that means that she's not queen. She is the consort, which is just like the king's wife.
Huh?
Because I know that Camilla.
Yeah, it's the consort.
Is the consort.
But Camilla is because I thought he's been married before, and that's why I thought, or like her ranking.
I think it's because if something happens to Philip, she doesn't become queen to take over. His son becomes king.
Oh,
so that's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you.
So I think that means her power is limited. Was my guess.
Well, one of our listeners, please enlighten us, dumb Americans, on how this works.
We're not. I mean, we both went to public school in America.
Yep.
Although this is from Europe, so they love white people in Europe when they want to educate us. It's their favorite subject.
So they having 100-year war, but
yeah. Then there was like, well, that's a blip. Let's not talk about that ever again. So this is happening. He gives his wife, so she doesn't have a lot of power and she's not trying to use it. He gives Marie Antoinette Petit Trianon, which is a small chateau, and rumors start to go that she's like renovating it with like gold and diamonds, that she's just into excess. It doesn't say if she's actually doing that to this, but like she likes stuff. So she did spend heavily on fashions and luxuries and gambling. And the country at the time was facing a grave financial crisis and the population was suffering. So some of the things that she did that were super awkward, a woman named Rose Burton. Okay, fine. Burton created dresses for her and hairstyles such as poufs. Remember those, like the 3 feet in the air?
That's what we associate, the look we associate with.
Yeah, that's what we think of her as, right? And a panache, which is a spray of feather plumes. And they also adopted the English fashion of dresses made of indienne, which was a material banned in France from 1686 to 1759 to protect local French woolen and silk industries. So she was like, screw your industry, I want to look good. By the time of the Flour War of 1775, a series of riots because the high price of flour and bread had damaged reputation among the general public. And then at that point, her reputation kind of went to hell. Like they don't like her, they don't like him, they're just pissed at the royalty, which seems fair. I feel like that's right.
Because it's like the majority of people are suffering, can't probably find bread, and then they hear about, these excesses. It's like when celebrities can't read the room and they post their Bentleys and, you know, and it's like
It
we're in a
makes me
recession.
Remember the Imagine video that
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I'm suffering in my mansion by my pool.
yeah.
I know, me too.
Me too.
That's relatable to all of
Yeah.
us with the screaming children in the background. Okay. Um, that was my life.
And back then it's even worse because I was looking at this YouTube series on like hygiene.
Oof.
Ooh, the French, they made perfume for a reason. I'm just saying.
Did they
So you can imagine.
They never bathed, right? No.
They thought bathing was, Europeans in general thought bathing was unhealthy.
Oh, but it's not though.
No, it's not.
It's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I feel like you should do it regularly.
Yes.
I beg you. Although I did have some nasty like pandemic quarantine days where maybe 3 days had passed, right?
That's because you're not going anywhere though. But these motherfuckers were just putting on like perfume on top of it and more cakey like makeup. They're like, it'll be fine.
Okay, so amid the atmosphere of a wave of libel. Okay, so it's a French word, libel, but I think libel, which was like dramatic, like the National Enquirer, essentially the National Enquirer, right?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So they were basically being like, she crazy. Holy Roman Empire Joseph II came to France. That is her brother. He came incognito. He used the name Comte de Falkenstein. I said Steen because I enjoy saying Steen. Feels like echt. Okay. For a 6-week visit during which he toured Paris extensively and was a guest at Versailles. He met his sister and her husband on April 18th, 1777 at the Chateau de la Mouette. That was wrong. And spoke frankly to his brother-in-law, curious as to why the royal marriage had not been consummated. Cool.
Oh.
Cool. I have a husband and I have a brother, and I never, ever, ever want that to have any sort of...
No.
Okay. I can't even say the sentence, but you know where I'm going with that.
Nope. Yep.
Okay. So he arrived at the conclusion that no obstacle to the couple's conjugal relations existed save the Queen's lack of interest and the King's unwillingness to exert himself. In a letter to his brother Leopold, Grand Duke of Tuscany, Joseph II described them as a couple of complete blunderers.
Oh, it sounds like they were very young. I wouldn't be surprised if she was like 14 or 15 and he was like 16 or 17.
No, he's 22.
When they got married.
He's 22.
Oh. Okay.
It's awkward. So he disclosed to Leopold that the inexperienced Louis XVI had confided in him the course of action he had been undertaking in their marital bed. He said, quote, Louis introduces the member and then, quote, stays there without moving for about 2 minutes and then withdraws without having completed the act and bids goodnight. How is this written down in history? We know
Nobody taught this man how to have sex.
That is so sad.
It's kind of sad. Yeah.
I mean, right? You sit them down. Also, there's like no instinct. I mean.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, because I would imagine, though, if you've never seen the act, you're like, yeah, it does seem weird. You're like, what? What does that? And he's been infantilized.
Yeah, that's
childhood.
I mean, he probably.
So he's used to people touching his body, probably, without it being
that's true.
A sexual thing. But I thought boys go through a thing where they're horny all the time. So I'm just so surprised that.
That's what I thought too. And there were thoughts that he might have had something called phimosis. But they say no, he probably didn't. Anyways, the intervention worked, and she gets pregnant. So your brother should never be your sex counselor, is all I'm saying. I'm not sure. Yeah, I am sure that shouldn't happen. But I mean, it worked. What are you gonna do? Although they're all incestual, like all the royals. Come on.
Yeah, but the brother probably. I understand why the brother stepped in, because he's like, now we married you off so we wouldn't be having problems with France.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna need you to make sure Louis is getting satisfied.
Honestly, Louis doesn't even have to like it. He just has to do it.
Just has to do it.
And girl, I'm not even going to talk to you about liking it. In fact, don't like it. Okay.
And Louis probably was like, oh, this is what I've been doing wrong. Oh, this is great.
And she's kind of like, oh, can I? Never mind. It's fine. Whipping back then. Okay. So, her daughter, Marie Therese Charlotte, was born at Versailles on December 19th, 1778. The child's paternity was contested in the libelles, as were all her children. So she had to deal with that. There's a lot of contesting of, but they were his. As far they did try to look things up, and they confirmed that's his. Okay, so 2 events happened during her pregnancy that had a profound effect on her life. Her friend, the Swedish diplomat Count Axel von Versen, came back to Versailles for 2 years, and her brother's claim to the throne of Bavaria, contested by the Habsburg monarchy and Prussia. So she pleaded with her husband for the French to intercede on the behalf of Austria. And the Peace of Teschen was signed May 13th, 1779. This gained a territory for Austria of at least 100,000 inhabitants. So this gave the impression that the queen is just there to help her country. And that's true. So that's
what marriage was all about back then with royals. So of course.
The people were like, I'm annoyed. And that makes sense.
And they took it out on her.
They did.
Because nothing's Louis's fault, of course.
Well, no.
He's the man. He's got a
man.
penis.
He has a God-given right to rule them. Cool.
Yes.
Because of his penis. Right.
Because of his penis,
said. Yeah, obviously.
That he doesn't know how to use, apparently.
No. Was going to waste for a while. All right. So she began to institute changes in court customs. This pissed people off. She was abandoning the heavy makeup look and the popular wide-hooped panniers. She wanted a more feminine look. And I love her for this. She opened a theater for her to perform in. I would do that.
I mean, she is queen or consort, excuse me.
I'm not saying I would be right, but I'm saying I would do that.
Exactly.
Okay. So the repayment of the French debt remained a problem. And also exacerbated by her prodding Louis XVI to involve France in Great Britain's war with its North American colonies. That feel familiar? So do you know, this is interesting. She played an important role in aiding the American Revolution by securing Austrian and Russian support for France, which resulted in the establishment of the First League of Armed Neutrality that stopped Britain's attack, and by weighing in decisively for the nomination of Philippe Henry as Minister of War and Charles Eugène Gabriel as Secretary of the Navy in 1780, who helped George Washington defeat the British in the American Revolutionary War, which ended in 1783. So we have her to thank for that.
Yeah, I knew we had France to thank.
But I didn't know it was her.
Yeah, I didn't realize.
That's cool.
Yeah.
This pissed off the French, but Yeah. I mean, monarchies will do that.
I mean, I understand the regular people's like, who is this woman?
I mean,
and it's also just easy to blame the woman for everything.
Yeah.
Because I wonder, she would still get some blame if she was also French, but the fact that her being a woman and an outsider.
Oh, I feel like she was an easy target. They kept mocking her, like the libelles, right? They kept questioning the paternity of her children. Like it was all about let's demean her because of her sex.
Yeah.
You know? So she played a decisive role in the nomination of Charles Alexander de Cologne, was a close friend of the Polignacs as controller, Polignac, I don't know, as controller general of finances, and the Baron de Brutel as the minister of the royal household, making him perhaps the strongest and most conservative minister of the reign. The result was that her influence became paramount in the government, and they rejected any major change to the structure of the old regime. So more than that, they then required 4 quarterings of nobility as a condition for the appointment of officers, which meant commoners could no longer be officers. It meant you had to be like, they weren't classist enough. They had to like double down.
That's
like,
never a good idea.
It's never a good idea.
That's never a good idea.
As I wrote, she is making France great again. Okay. I said it. So, 1781, October 22nd, she gives birth to Louis, her son. And then her mother died. A year before her mother dies. And then she gives birth. She was worried about her mother's death affecting the what is the word? Alliance between the two countries.
Oh, okay. Because it sounds like her mother was a strong influence.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So they were very excited about the birth of an heir, but it helped Austria more than it helped France. She was able to obtain her brother's support. Wait, is that right? That doesn't make any sense. What happened?
What happened was I find it interesting as you're talking about this, like as we're in the midst of the whole Meghan Markle thing, and, which is also reminiscent of Lady Di, Princess Diana's issue, like how these women, if they're married into the royal family, any royal family, and she's considered, well, she's already a target. And I'm sure that even Kate, at first, they were calling her gypsies, like her family gypsies.
Oh,
and,
yeah. They're
like
just
in
looking
lower
for
class. And you're just like,
when they're like the richest people alive.
Yeah. It's like Kate's family is rich. And like, but it's like they target the woman. It's so interesting. And obviously with the Meghan Markle thing, then you add race onto it and then her Americanness onto it. Then it just really highlights it. But even, I think back to, Princess Diana, like how they hounded her, like, and it's coming from the outside with the newspapers, but it's also coming from inside.
Yes,
the court.
They have people.
That's
helping.
the thing that stresses them out. Yeah,
and it's interesting because she is trying to hire more and more people on her own. She is
on
trying
her
to
own,
affect it. But that could be a protection as well. Because,
it definitely is.
Like she needs people on her side.
Yeah.
Or she can be in a lot of trouble, which she'll get into later. Don't you worry.
Oh, yeah.
So in 1782, after the governess of the royal children, Princess went bankrupt. She resigned. And Marie appointed her favorite, the Duchess de Polignac. I'm just going to call her Polignac to the position. Okay. So the court disapproved this completely, except the king and the queen fully trusted her. They gave her a 13-room apartment in Versailles. They paid her well. The entire family got royal favors and titles and positions, and they were suddenly like wealthy, and that absolutely pissed off everybody. So we see where we're heading, right? So Count Axel von Fersen, after his return from America, June 1783, which was the end of the American Revolution, and he came back and was accepted to the Queen's private society. So there were claims that the two were romantically involved. Most of their correspondence had been lost, destroyed, or redacted. But then in 2016, the Telegraph's Henry Samuel announced that researchers at France's Research Center for the Conservation of Collections, quote, using cutting-edge X-ray and different infrared scanners, had deciphered letters that proved the affair. So we found out in 2016 that, yes, in fact, they had an affair. So pamphlets describing farcical sexual deviance, including the Queen and her friends, were growing in popularity all around the country. I mean, she's popular, but like in a not great way.
But they're spreading like, oh, she's whoring it out in Versailles. Yeah.
Because she's a woman, and what better way to destroy a woman's... And God forbid she enjoys sex.
God forbid.
That's for a man to enjoy. Duh. Women, man.
How dare you enjoy your own body?
Ew. Stop it. Don't even look at it. Just stand there. So the attacks were increasing, and they connected with the public dislike of her association with the rival nation of Austria, because the Portefeuille d'un Talon Rouge was one of the earliest pamphlets, and it it included the queen in a variety of decrying the immoral practices of the court. They described amorous encounters with a wide range of figures, from the Duchess de la Ponec to Louis the 15th, like to her father-in-law. Ew.
Oh.
So women, her father-in-law, they suggested she was a lesbian, which was known as the German vice. Okay.
Tell you, white on white crime. I'm just telling you.
You know what? And that's what we need to focus on. Okay.
Wow. The Germans are like, now why we in it?
Leave me out of this. Thank you. We are busy murdering our own people. Thank you. So many white enemies, so little time. So then she created a Hamlet. I'm not going to go into it, but she's like designing shit with lots of money. She accumulated a library with over 50,000 books. Meanwhile, people are hungry. She's sponsoring the arts. She did a whole thing with, what's his name?
Mozart.
That's him. Yeah, I'm like, I wrote it down. Mozart, I told you. Because even though I printed this, I still wrote a bunch of stuff. And then, okay. So there was a whole...
So I just want to say, she did not listen to her mother, because her mother would have been like, you got to appeal to the small people. Like, that was her big mistake.
She wanted to own her own property because... I give it to her. She wanted to be able to pass it down to her children. And she's a woman who wanted property. And she's like, listen, who else in this world is going to be a woman with property? I might have the chance. Right. But the thing is, the people are hungry, and she's purchasing property. And it's like big property. It's not like a cute house we can't afford in California. You know what I'm saying? But she can't, it's just, the tiny little house worth $18 million. California. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying.
But she doesn't understand the importance of optics.
Exactly.
In the, so the hearts and minds of people.
She did it. She purchased the property, but like optics. Exactly.
Yeah.
So she, what am I saying?
Because it sounds like if she had like created like a library or like an institution for the poor, in addition to doing all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she could have. Well, she didn't. But she did not like people that were not her class. She was uncomfortable.
So she's a snob on top of it.
Think about it. She appointed people who wanted to make France great again. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just elitist. It's like the elitist of the elitist. Like, you can't.
And you don't think that the peasants have any say-so anyway, or will ever have any say-so.
They weren't born to be as intelligent as the upper class, obviously. So, the affair of the diamond necklace. So what happened was, there was a false accusation that she had participated in a crime to defraud the crown's jewelers in acquiring a very expensive diamond necklace, and then refused to pay for it. So she didn't do that. The reality is, she rejected the idea of buying it. She did not want to buy it, but her signature was forged by someone named Jean de Voilà Saint-Marie, and he was later she was later convicted, but that led to the France dissolution of the monarchy. Like, even though she didn't do it, they were like, now you're like, bitch, you're stealing. And it gave moral weight and popular support for the French Revolution. I mean, it's more complex. Y'all Google it. But like, that's essentially what happened. The king was depressed, asked his wife for help because there were no therapists at the time, right?
Of course not.
So she was like, don't worry, I'll take care of it. So she got increased political power. So finances were getting desperate. it forced the king and the queen and the minister of finance, Cologne, to call a session of the Assembly of Notables. After a hiatus of 160 years, the assembly was held for the purpose of initiating necessary financial reforms, but the parliament refused to cooperate. The first meeting took place on February 22nd, 1787, 9 days after Vergennes, who was in charge, died. She didn't attend the meeting, and her absence resulted in accusations that the queen was trying to undermine its purpose. So these optics are destroying her.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why she didn't go. I didn't get that, but she did not go.
Yeah,
so,
bad
you
move.
know, there were a large, their financial problems. There were several expensive wars. The royal family spent way too much money, and the privileged classes did not. Y'all, they don't want to pay taxes. They won't pay taxes.
There it is.
Mm-hmm. I'll say it.
Yeah. So all the burden goes on the poor.
Yeah. Suck it. You watch History of the World Part 1? Do you ever see that?
World? No.
Mel Brooks, the movie.
Oh, I have seen that. Yes.
Okay, girl.
When I was
Fuck
a
the
kid.
poor. It's actually Marie Antoinette. And that's essentially fuck the poor. Her nickname was Madame Deficit.
Oh,
Deficit.
yeah. I understood that part.
So the queen attempted to fight back these bad optics with propaganda, portraying her as a caring mother. Most notably in the painting by Elizabeth Vigée-Lebrun. Everyone has 19 names. Okay.
Yes. The French and the Spanish love multiple names.
My God, just keep it coming.
Yep.
And with accents, I cannot do. I mean, I can, but like not well. Okay. And it was exhibited at the Royal Académie Salon de Paris in August 1787, showing her with her children. Listen, I know a lot of good moms that spend too much money. So like if you think being a good mom is going to stop people from thinking you spend money.
Also, this sounds like it's a little bit too little too late.
Oh,
like she should have started this campaign like
1,000%. Yeah.
She's not politically savvy at all when it came to the people.
No, she really she just made bad move after bad move. So she was instrumental in reinstating Jacques Necker as finance minister. So she's trying August 1788, which was a popular move because what he did, he proposed to double the representation of the third estate, which was there to check the power of the aristocracy. So she was like, oh, okay, that's fine. But then the fracture between the democratic third estate and the conservative nobility of the second estate widened a year later. And Marie Antoinette knew that her rival at this time, Duke d'Orleans, gave money and bread to the people during the winter, and that made her look like an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So
because he knew about optics.
Yeah, he sure did. So her son tragically dies on June 4th, but the people did not care because they were hungry. Right. And then the third estate declared itself a national assembly. And so it took the tennis court oath, which is, so the door to its appointed meeting place, they were supposed to check the royalty, had been closed because the king said to lock the door. So they met on the tennis court. And the agreement was to not separate before it had given a constitution to the nation. And as people either spread or believed rumors that the queen wished to bathe in their blood, Marie Antoinette went into mourning for her child. So Necker was then dismissed. And then Paris was besieged by riots, culminating in the storming of the Bastille on July 14th, which is also the day Sal proposed to me. Very important day.
Yes.
Okay. So in the days that followed the storming of the Bastille, for fear of assassination and ordered by the king, the emigration of members of the high aristocracy began on July 17th. Lots of people left: cousins, Polignacs, Marie Antoinette.
So they started getting out of Dodge. They were like, peace out.
So she actually stayed with the king because his power was being gradually taken away, and she wouldn't leave. She, for whatever reason, she didn't want to leave his side. Maybe she loved him. I don't know.
Sounds like it,
I
actually.
mean, it does kind of. So,
It sounds like they became adults together, so.
Yeah. I want, like, I can't really parse that out. Like, I bet you there's more information when
of course.
you tell me. But there's so much information, you guys. This is like 97 pages. The abolition of feudal privileges. You heard what I said, right? By the National Constituent Assembly on August 4th, 1789. And the Declarations of the Rights of Man and of Citizens, drafted by Lafayette, you know that guy.
Lafayette. Yeah, I know that guy.
With help of Thomas Jefferson, and adopted on August 26th, paved the way to a constitutional monarchy, which lasted essentially a year. Cool. Despite these dramatic changes, the life at the court continued while the situation in Paris was becoming critical, because still no bread, okay? No bread. They're hungry.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So October 5th, a crowd from Paris descended upon Versailles and forced the royal family to move to the Tuileries Palace in Paris. They're just going from palace to palace. They're just, hop on the palace train. She tried to continue to do charitable functions and attend religious ceremonies. But, too little, too late. She was taking care of her kids. She actually had a lot of children. She had 4 adopted children as well. One of those adopted children was a Senegalese slave. Give her this credit. She freed him. Well, this is how they friend. She freed him, she baptized him, and adopted him.
Oh, God.
So I don't know if that's a
freed
good thing.
him, baptized him. It's like, how was he enslaved to begin with? You don't get credit for freeing somebody.
Thanks for freeing this one human, baptizing him to force your religion on him, and then keeping him for yourself.
Was he enslaved by France? And then she's like, oh, in Senegal. And then she's like, oh, I freed him and baptized him.
I'm basically a saint.
Yes.
Cool.
I freed him, and then I civilized him, and then I adopted him.
That's right.
She's just clueless.
She is clueless. I mean, man. Okay, so here's what happened. Okay. Marie Antoinette, in that period, established an alliance with this guy who was the Comte de Mirabeau. Mirabeau. We're going to call him Mirabeau. That's wrong. That's not pronounced correctly, but it is what it is. He was the most important lawmaker in the assembly. He wanted to reconcile the queen with the people. So she was like, cool. And he was like, I'll restore some of the king's powers. And she was like, great. So over the objections of Lafayette and his allies, because Lafayette, we knew where he stood because of Hamilton. Thank you, Hamilton. The king was given a suspensive veto, allowing him to veto any laws over a 4-year period. So now... That's why a constitutional monarchy doesn't work if the king can veto anything he wants.
Yeah, that's not the same thing. It's an oxymoron.
Exactly. So what happened was this. They were both Roman Catholic. Her political ideas and her belief in the absolute power of monarchs were based on the divine right of kings, as we talked about. There was a day, the family was preparing to leave for St. Cloud to attend Easter Mass. And so there was a crowd showed up, disobeyed Lafayette's orders because he told them not to, and prevented their departure from Paris. So that incident, so they were trying to go to Mass, and a crowd showed up to stop them. So this incident fortified her in her determination to leave Paris for personal and political reasons, not alone, but with her family. So there were several plots designed to help the royal family escape. So they were there, but under duress. They weren't allowed to leave. And so she was just like, you know what? I can't even go to Mass. Fuck this. So what happened was she wanted to go, so many plots, but King Louis was like, I don't like any of them. And she would not leave without him. So when they finally committed to a plan, Its poor execution was the cause of its failure. It was known as the Flight to Varennes to reach the royalist stronghold of Montmirail, and after many delays, the escape was ultimately attempted June 21st, 1791. The entire family was arrested less than 24 hours later and taken back to Paris within a week. They went the rest, there went the
So
rest
did they make it to the stronghold? I'm sorry,
They
I missed
didn't.
that.
No, they didn't. So
because it sounds like this is privileged people coming up with a plan.
Yes,
That
and they've never
sounds-
had to plan things
To
before.
think and plan anything before. Yeah.
They are not clever.
Right.
They really aren't. It's really interesting. It's a lot of just like bad ideas, and there was no because there's this whole divine right thing, there's no advisor that they would really listen to, right?
Yeah, because I'm sure there were people with common sense who were like, you gotta listen to me. And they're like, nope. I'm divine. I've been given the divinity because I am royal and I know best.
That's exactly what happened. So, upon learning of what happened, the National Constituent Assembly sent 3 representatives to escort them back to Paris. On the way back, they were jeered and insulted by the people, and she was like, "What? What? Me?" Right?
Yeah.
They were not brought to trial, and they were publicly exonerated of any crime in relation to the attempted escape. After they returned from, they kind of got there and then returned, basically. So they got there, but they immediately returned. Then they were held under tight surveillance. So a lot happens. There's this thing. Lafayette opens fire on the people, demanding to sign a petition to depose the king. So there's a riot outside, and he decides to open fire. This fucked them up. The queen is now the enemy. The truth is she did in fact pass secrets on to Austria, but that was the accusation, and she did do that. So, and also at this time, the king is continuing to veto measures. So what happened was there was this thing called the Girondins. I said that like an Israeli. Girondins. So there's a radical majority, the Girondins. So what happened was they were trying to change things. She refused to collaborate them, and then which led them to denounce the treason of the Austrian comity, a direct allusion to the queen. So after Madame Roland sent a letter to the king denouncing the queen's role in these matters, urged by the queen, Louis XVI disbanded the government, thus losing his majority in the assembly. Okay, so there's a lot happening. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
On June 20th, 1792, I'm skipping a lot of things. A lot of things happened.
Yeah.
A mob of terrifying aspect broke into the Tuileries and made the king wear a bonnet rouge, which was like a red Purin cap, to show his loyalty to the Republic, insulted Marie Antoinette, accusing her of betraying France. Because what I said back there, she was basically working for Austria, and they were just like, we are done. In consequence, the queen asked Fersen to urge the foreign powers to carry out their plans to invade France and to issue a manifesto in which they threatened to destroy Paris if anything happened to the royal family. That didn't help anything. So the Brunswick Manifesto, issued the 25th of July, 1792, triggered the events of August 10th, when the approach of an armed mob on its way to the Tuileries Palace forced the royal family to seek refuge at the Legislative Assembly. 90 minutes later, the palace was invaded by the mob, who massacred the Swiss guards. Whew. August 13th, the royal family was imprisoned in the tower of the temple in Marais under conditions considerably harsher than those of their previous confinement in Tuileries. So maybe she shouldn't have done that.
No.
Yeah. So a week later, several of the royal family's attendants, along one of them was a Princess de Lamballe, were taken for interrogation by the Paris Commune, transferred to the La Force prison after a rapid judgment. Marie Louise de Lamballe was savagely killed. Her head was affixed on a pike, I think and was paraded through the city to the temple for the queen to see.
Damn.
The guards around her,
man.
Yeah, they're like, fuck you. Okay. On September 21st, 1792, the fall of the monarchy was officially declared, and the National Convention became the governing body of the French Republic. The royal family name was downgraded to the non-royal Capets, and preparation for the trial of the king in a court of law. Charged with treason against the French First Republic, Louis XVI was separated from his family and tried in December. He was found guilty by the convention and, as we all know, condemned to death January 21st, 1793. The queen, now called Widow Capet, plunged into deep mourning. She still hoped her son would one day rule France. This amazes me. She's like...
It doesn't. Just delusion.
I mean, but will my son one day rule France? Girl?
Because keep in mind, she's part of like the institution that believes that we're better.
Yeah.
And has had evidence that they're better by living in these palaces, by marrying each other and living in other palaces. And like, it's the delusion is deep. Like
it is so just, when I read that, I was like, what? Okay. Yeah. So he's dead. They're like, what do we do with her? Some advocated for her death. Some said, let's exchange her for French prisoners of war or something. Thomas Paine said, send her to America. She might do well, right? Then they called for her trial. So by the end of May, this is kind of sad.
This is 1793?
Yes.
Okay.
Calls were made to retrain her 8-year-old son to make him pliant to revolutionary ideas. So they separated him from his mother on July 3rd. And so he was handed over to a man named Antoine Simon. And until her removal from the temple, Marie spent hours trying to catch a glimpse of her son, who within weeks turned against her. He's 8 years old.
I mean, he's 8, so.
But did he turn against her? Or was he 8 years old?
Yeah,
living
he's
in chaos.
8. Yeah.
So she was trialed by the Revolutionary Tribunal October 14th, 1793. So she and her lawyers were given less than a day to prepare for her defense. They were gonna charge her. Like they were, what? An unfair trial? Who?
It's just performative at that point.
It's just performative. October 16th, she was declared guilty of the 3 main charges against her. So at worst, you know what they are. They thought life imprisonment. They thought that's the worst. She's a woman. It's fine. But no, they condemned her to death. Like she was shocked.
Yeah.
She thought her son was going to take the throne.
Oh, so they didn't chop off her head? That sounds so crass. Forgive me. No. They didn't send her to the guillotine? She was shot. Oh.
They chopped off her head. I just said shot, but they chopped off her head. Yeah, you're right. So I meant like emotionally shoot her down.
Oh.
They shot her down. You know. Okay.
The French Revolution. Damn, that's gangster.
She was guillotined at 12:15 p.m., October 16th, 1793. Her last words are recorded as, Pardonnez-moi, monsieur, je ne l'ai pas... I can do this. I can do this.
You can do it. Je ne l'ai pas...
Okay. Pardonnez-moi, monsieur, je ne l'ai pas fait exprès. Okay, I think that was bad, but I don't even know. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Uh-huh.
I don't know the latter
No,
part.
you don't. I didn't either, honestly. She said, pardon me, sir. I did not do it on purpose because she accidentally stepped on her executioner's shoe. And those are her last words. Her body was thrown into an unmarked grave.
Damn.
Yeah. I mean, her and Louis' bodies were later exhumed and given a proper burial, but like 18 years later. Well,
those French people are like, fuck the monarchy. Fuck every last one of y'all.
What's interesting about her story is that it's just, it keeps elevating, right? So it's like she puts Jules in a special room and they're like, I'm starting to get hungry. And she's like, cool, I'm going to make everyone wear expensive wigs. And they're like, nah, my stomach is super growling. And she's like, cool, I'm going to buy a house. And they're like, I haven't eaten in 3 days. You know what I mean? Like, it's like escalating.
It's what happens when you turn away from people suffering who you are.
Yes.
You are, by every account, in charge of providing for.
Yes,
right?
You are. You really
so like it's one thing for, different countries to do it, but you are the head of this country and the people are getting hungry and hungry and more desperate. Like,
I think it's really interesting. Like we talk about like in our politics in America, which is messy, very, very messy, right? But when someone who's voted in, who's making these choices, we always go back to, you work for me. And it's hard to get that. I think like psychologically, we've had, there have been kings and queens forever. And you still have to remind yourself that's not actually how this is anymore. You're not ordained by shit,
She also didn't play she just didn't, maybe because she came from aristocracy, but she just didn't understand how to play. I'll go back to Princess Diana. A lot of people, she was obviously made very miserable. And now we kind of understand the context of what was going on inside the palace with her,
Yes.
But also what Princess Diana did do was that she got the people on her side.
She actually did the complete opposite of what Marie Antoinette
did. Yeah.
I mean, she was pissed at the guy for giving them bread. She was pissed at that. That makes me look bad.
And that's why Princess Diana is so beloved even by Americans who remember her, that she also, remember when she started doing humanitarian work, and she was one of the first people, especially high profile people, who would touch children who were HIV positive at a time where people didn't want to touch HIV positive people, even children, babies. And
she changed the world.
You could say, it's performative. And I don't know how much of it was, intentional, but what I know is that she did it. And so to me on the outside is like, oh, so when she died, we were all like, oh my God, like a good person died. Whereas Marie Antoinette, it seems to be looking away from it, looking away from the suffering.
And I truly think that, to some degree, they were all raised to care only about themselves. Right. Like there was and their power and their power play and what's the right thing. But
they weren't good at it, because even if they had just worked with the new government, like with Lafayette, and if they had worked with the people and been like, okay, well, I have veto power for 2 things, or to work with the people.
I have a lot of veto power. Let me not abuse it.
Yeah.
Let me show them optics that I'm for them. They can eat, let's say, every day, right? I'll allow that. And then they'd be like, ooh, I'm not hungry all the time.
Or to show people like, oh, we close one of the palaces down.
Right.
Because in a person's mind, they may not be affected directly from that closure, but they're like, oh, they at least care about me.
Yep.
Like my king and queen care about the fact that we're suffering.
Yep. And if they don't, there's no going back. Like the more prove it.
Yeah. And then they found out that she was conspiring with Austria.
She was in fact conspiring with Austria. I was like, oh girl. You're also, she never ever said, let them eat cake. That was written down by some other princess. I don't know, look it up. But she never said that. And the quote is actually, let them eat brioche, which is also delicious.
Which is also delicious. It's just, but it's the sentiment behind it. I can see it. It's just like, ain't I a woman?
Essentially said, let them eat cake.
She, with her actions. Yeah.
Huh.
Wow, Marie Antoinette. I didn't understand the whole political stuff, so thank you for enlightening me on that. Obviously, I've heard of her, and I watched The Great or whatever, or not The Great. What's the one?
The Great is the Russian one, which
is the Russian one. What's the
thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah, it's really good. I've watched Marie Antoinette stories before, and so
I didn't realize that she played with politics the way she did.
I didn't either.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Like, But it also goes to show you that even when you're privileged, like it's really important to teach your kids survival skills, because it sounds like her mother had survival skills.
Yes. Her
But she
mother
didn't
had, my guess is that she wasn't dumb, but she wasn't smart.
Yeah.
You know
Common
what I mean?
sense.
She
It's
had
common sense, practical
She
sense.
didn't have common sense, and she was somewhat swayed when she was younger. She
Yeah.
kind of did what people told her to do a little, and then when she was getting more power, she just really liked it. And so
I think it also, this is what happens when you get power, but you don't earn power.
yeah.
Because if you don't earn it, you don't know how to preserve it, right?
That's very true. That's very true.
So it's like wealth, right? Like if you're given wealth, you don't like, unless you've been poor your whole life and then you win the lottery. And it's like, you know, but some of those people
Yeah.
falter too. Like,
No, they say that people who win the lottery, like 95% of them go back to the way they were.
yeah. And then there's that person who's like, I'm gonna buy a $40 million plane and get on cocaine and crack. And it's like, no, that's not a good idea.
All right. Well, there goes your winnings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
but
Thank
also
you though.
yeah. You're welcome. This was
Marie Antoinette. Oh, wow. Well, that was a long one, but it's
Yeah,
a good
it
one. Well, that wraps it up for another episode of Notorious Women Podcast. Guys, thank you for following us. And Miriam, do you want to tell them where they can find us?
I do.
On IG and...
We are on Instagram, which is Notorious Women Podcast on Instagram. And then we have, if you want to email us, and please email us. And if you have ideas or thoughts or suggestions, or you know about something, we will bring it up again and talk about it. Our Gmail is notoriouswmpod@gmail.com. And yeah, that's where you can find us.
And also, please, please, please tell everyone you know about our podcast. Also, give us a 5-star review. 5 stars, 5 stars.
5 stars. And if you want to write a little blurb about how pretty we are, I know you can't see us, but like I know you can feel the beauty through your car stereo.
Miriam, I don't know about you, but I want to be called smart. Smart.
Who? But we're girls. What are you talking about? Ew. Lavetta.
I know.
The boys might hear you.
The boys might hear that I'm smart. Never get a man.
We are funny. We are smart.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. And guys, that wraps it up for another episode. And we will see you next week.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.